Hello guys, welcome back. So I talked to one of you and I want to make this video, and this video needs remade. It needs a total solid reboot. The person said, well, why don't you just, put up the old video and put like a couple comments. Oh my gosh, guys, no, we have to totally redo this. I will give you links to the old videos, but first things first, if you overshare, I'm insta-banning you. I don't care if you just gave me $100 in the tip jar. Boo, you out. So I had, ooh, back there. So forceful. So you know what kind of mood Mr. Silly Fox is in. But Loki and Sex too. First things, a couple other things first too. If you're too young, boo, out of here. You do not need to hear this conversation yet. And if Loki is your dad, you obviously don't need here to be here. Please go. Okay, so for those that are left, all two of you, it's not a requirement. If anyone tells you that falling in love with Loki or having a relationship with Loki is a requirement, they are wrong. They are creepy, especially if they tell you that they can let Loki, manifest inside of them. And Loki really wants to be intimate with you that way. Please run. There are a lot of predatory people. It's why if you work Voodoo, you don't get intimate with a spirit that way, even if you are getting married. It's just not done because it's a lot about consent, free will, and the other person, if they are truly being possessed, they are not there to give consent. Even if they gave consent prior to, they are not there to give consent. And as we all know, if your partner changes their mind halfway through, you stop. You stop. You go, oh, okay, and you stop. They don't have the power to do that. That is why it's frowned upon in most societies, and why you'll really never see these people that start to make these, sexy fun time cults really go anywhere, because it can be very predatory in nature, and it oftentimes, unfortunately, ends up to be, and they're not only taking advantage of somebody wanting to get close to a god, but they're also usually taking advantage of them monetarily and with illegal substances and everything else. Yeah, who knew this would be so complicated? Now, obviously, if you fall in love with a god, it can be really scary, because most of us came from the Judeo-Christian background, where falling in love with Jesus or falling in love with God means something totally different. It's supposed to be innocent and pure and everything else. And if you start to develop romantic feelings towards Jesus, that is wrong. If you want to run your fingers through his hair like in South Park, or kiss him or anything else in a way that's not totally pure and nothing to do with "you're cute," that's wrong, and they will kick you out of the church. They will be dunking you in holy water. They will be doing something. You're supposed to love Jesus, fall in love with the Lord, but in a very chaste and pure way. If you fell in love with Jesus and you want his babies, they don't, that's, unless you find a Gnostic cult, they don't approve of that. They don't approve of that. So for any watching Christians, I'm well aware I was raised Roman Catholic. I'm well aware that's not how it works. Though, to be fair, for outsiders reading the work of mystics, that's what they think it sounds like, because their hearts were on fire and they were so aflamed and they're levitating above the floor. They were trembling with passion. I get it, but, it's supposed to be chaste and pure. So I get it. Coming into a religion, spirituality, lifestyle, however you see it, where you can fall in love with God. Not everybody's going to agree to that, to be sure, but you can fall in love with a god and you can have intimacy. It's quite the different step. Now, all that said, in case I didn't say it already, this is not a requirement. Okay, yeah, I said that. This is not a requirement. It's not something you have to do. If you and Loki have the type of relationship where you couldn't dream of falling in love with him because that would just be so strange, or you don't want to be intimate, tell him. If he would ever bring it up and say, I want to be intimate with you, and you go, oh god, no, I just don't do that for whatever reason, it's fine. You don't owe this to anyone. You don't owe this to Loki. You don't owe this to any god. And okay, let's say you've gotten into a relationship, but you just got into a bow chicka wow wow relationship, and that is absolutely all that's happening. I love Loki, but it seems that there are a lot of women out there that will claim that that is exactly all that's happening. Now, once you've done your discernment check and you know it's not just a fantasy about Tom Hiddleston, and I'm not trying to be mean, but those rabid fangirls are out there, you really need to talk to your divinity. If the two of you agree to intimacy only relationship. And you both have to agree. That's one thing. But if a god is just showing up in your dreams, or this is all they want, this is something you have to address because you are not a celestial empowered sex worker at this point in time. God does not show up in your dreams, have an encounter, and then you win the lottery the next day, or your boss gives you a bonus. That's not how this works. See video on working sex magic. That's not how this works. They don't leave a blessing on your pillow, you know. There are women who will say they've had intimate dreams. We all have, you know, as adults, vast majority of us do have sexual dreams, and sometimes they include deities. But you know, you'll also learn discernment too. Like I had this dream that I won't tell you the content of, but since I do never have had those two particular deities say anything before, I was like, okay, that was the weirdest dream to have about them, but sometimes sex in a dream is a metaphor for something else. It's not always, you know, fun time, fun time. Sometimes it's like your subconscious saying these gods would really like to know you better, but your subconscious picked the least fortunate way to do it. And then you're asking the gods, I had this dream. No, it doesn't always mean that. So, you have fallen in love with Loki, and you are romantic with Loki. Now, whatsoever shall you do? Some people get married, some people don't. They don't like the idea of marriage. I respect that, but the thing to do is if you don't like the idea of marriage, don't therefore combat it. Just state your position respectfully and say, I am with this deity, but I just don't believe in marriage because I feel X, Y, and Z. Don't shout that you think that I hate a certain G word, are entitled, or that we're wrong, or that we're dumb, or that we're attention seeking, something, something, but you're doing it the right way. That doesn't help the discussion. If you do get married, do make sure you both know what you're getting into. Loki has plenty of this energy to go around. And you are unfortunately going to run into a lot of even Lokean books that have a great deal about this kind of energy, and you might not be cool with that. Do be aware it's out there. Do be aware it can be quite the shock to the system, and yes, it can get hurt feelings from you. It can. Some people read it and enjoy it, and some people get really, really hurt. I think at the first part of the relationship, some people are more open to it because they still haven't developed that deeper bond. But as the bond goes on over the years, it's not quite as important as it was. I'm not saying that it just flat out doesn't matter, but you might not be so supercharged that you want to read someone's encounters with their god. Some people are like they could read about it with somebody with a god they've never worked with, and they would be fine. That might be beautiful, and that might be such a great expression of love, but the ones for Loki tend to be graphic, very graphic. And there's no reading them any other way other than graphic. And even people that have relationships have said, that's a bit much. And they have published these things as works. So do be aware that's out there. Do be aware the fangirl element is out there. Usually to them, Loki looks like Tom Hiddleston. And they are obsessed with Marvel Loki. Now, sure, we have some Marvel stuff in the background. We got that years ago before the Disney element came out, and you know, you always had rabid fangirls before. It's been a decade now since the first films, but it has just exploded lately, guys. Plus, there are writers who have wrote erotic novels about our Loki, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help because you're getting a lot of women writing overly erotic blogs while saying they hate their dumb husband and their stupid kids, and that's not how romance in love with a god should look. You could vaguely say you've fallen in love. You know, you can say you've fallen in love. You can say you got married. You can come onto the interwebs and go, oh, look, you know, look at my ring and stuff like that. That's fine. That's empowering. But you don't have to share the intimate details. Be a gentle person of any gender. Don't share. Don't kiss and tell. It's, you know, it's the classy way to do it. You don't have to kiss and tell. Now, if you go into a forum where someone asks, would you share? Ask Loki, is it okay for you to share? Don't overly share, but say, yes, that's normal. That has happened in my life. And, maybe I saw one person once say, well, I've had encounters with God and Goddess, and I'm married to both the God and Goddess aspects of Loki. But that's all you have to share. You don't have to, there's this kind of human need to help that makes you think, well, maybe if I tell you exactly what acts we did, you'll feel better. No, no, that's not going to help anyone. That might help one person, and it might not help them for the reason you expect. So, that's another thing to think of too. Humans are humans, right? Just because lesbian love stories written by lesbians are meant for lesbians, that's not going to stop certain straight guys from going and reading them and making some lesbians tear their hair out. Same thing with you sharing this erotic adventure. You don't know who's reading that. And you might be very upset and squicked out to find out who's reading that. So just be aware that it could be people who would otherwise condemn and spit on you for your religion and your relationship with a god. Those are the very people who are going to read that erotica you just put up and be like, oh yeah, I like this. Do be aware of that. And, oversharing kind of cheapens our God. Our first thought should be whether we have a romantic, or intimate, or both relationship with Loki, should be to protect him, should be to protect his reputation. There are oodles of articles on how sexy he is and how much sexual charisma he has, and oh, he's such a sexy beast, but he doesn't need more. He doesn't need more. There's plenty out there. Is there a time and place to discuss it? Like right now? Yes, but it doesn't mean that we just trot that out as a sum total of the relationship. That's another thing I want to touch on. That should not be the sum total of a relationship any more than falling in love and having an intimate relationship with a mortal spouse should be the sum total of it. In the end, even if you're just having an intimate relationship and you don't believe in marriage or consorts or whatever, this is still going to be the God that ideally should be around when you're paying bills, should be around when you have to make decisions, should be around when you're sick. And you need to realize that although the other stuff is fun, it's not the sum total of the relationship. And you might go through a dry spell in your life where just for stress, 2020, 2021, stress on a lot of people, stress, age, diet, medical conditions, you might not have a need for romantic intimacy, and you have to have, hopefully have a relationship there that you can set aside the fact and just be frank with Loki and say, I no longer feel desire. I no longer feel as, randy as I once did, and I don't really feel like doing this anymore. You should never perform any act that you don't feel comfortable with. I don't care if it's with a mortal spouse or if it's with a divinity. Tell Loki it's okay. Tell him, hey, we started off as intimate partners, but I no longer feel this. Or maybe you really enjoy intimacy, but you've had too many people overshare, and now that has destroyed your ability to have intimacy with Loki. Tell him that too. I've had so many women overshare that, frankly, a lot of times it's the last thing on my mind with Loki, which, we're never going to get rid of the rabbit fangirl base. If you are at a point where you just had a rabbit fangirl overshare and you can't possibly think of ever being anywhere near Loki again, tell him. Tell him you're hurt. Tell him you want some kind of recompense. Tell him you want him to work. Then the thing is on Loki to come towards you and work and rebuild and reestablish a relationship. It can't be all you. It can't be all you. There are some people who enter a romantic relationship and think, no, therefore they must dance attendance upon Loki. No, he has to work too. That's kind of an unhealthy thing to do. Some people love to give gifts to their god because they're intimate. Some people love to do other stuff, but don't let Loki take advantage. He's very clever, and if you are going to let him just sit back and do absolutely nothing as a deity, he's as godly as the rest. He'll let you do it. Sometimes he might put up a token protest, but sometimes not. You don't need to have a god who's just lying around like a lump, unless, you are dancing attendance on him. You don't need that. And again, it's in the background, but you don't need that. And, Gods aren't always going to be a sterling character. I love Loki, but it would be just like Loki too to take advantage of someone not knowing that, if they are in an intimate relationship with him. It doesn't mean, as I said, you're not an empowered sex worker. It doesn't mean every encounter you therefore earn some kind of celestial goodie or blessing. But it does mean that if you are in a relationship with a deity and you two haven't said it's simply about the intimacy, then yeah, they should be giving you basic care that any other god would, whether you consider yourself married or consort or not. And, lastly, to wrap up, this is not a contest. This is not a contest. If we show you things on the channel, we show you first. We are showing you first that I've actually bought to work spiritually with Loki because it's an important part of my Lokeanism. Would be really tacky though to come on and drape the fur around me and say Loki got me this and like totally switch it up and make it like I got this because I'm giving Loki romantic favors. That's gross. That's nothing I need to do. Please get that image out of your mind. Go use mind bleach. I don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. No one does. So, when you do get blessings, say Loki gave me this blessing. Do not say Loki gave me this blessing because we were intimate last night. Even if you think that's the case, there's no need to do that because that's not going to be the case every single time. If it was, nymphomaniacs would be living in mansions, driving around with Bentleys. So, if you guys like what you see, I got a laughter backer. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye bye.